Peace and blessings. Of course, this is Brother Mike X Speaks. This is going to be a part 2 to a clip that I shot, actually a few minutes ago, talking about blackness, the need for a positive, self-empowering identity. In that clip, I talked about the fact that because we have treated, slavery and race as a taboo subject, the fact that because so many of us have, for whatever reasons, failed to learn more about what has happened to us in our past and how that connects with us in our present, how we've developed identities amongst us that keep us divided and conquered. We talked about how amongst our young people particularly, it's the nigger mentality. And, not blaming this totally on them because, as the old saying goes, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So our young people, as lost as many of them are, it's not their fault, the leadership hasn't been there. We as adults, on a collective level, we haven't done the things that we should have done and continue to be pressed, to find a way to do for ourselves. We haven't done those things. We haven't provided the foundation for our young people to be rooted in a positive, cultural, spiritual, racial identity. We talked a little bit about how so many of our adults have adopted the label minority, and how words have power. The root word of minority is minor. And if you accept that as a label, I can't help but to believe that somewhere, somehow, that will contribute to you acting or us acting on our behalf in a minor way. That by accepting the label minority, it by default elects someone else to be major or majority, and puts us in a position of being dependent on someone else to save us and to deal with the many issues in our community, instead of us getting into the driver's seat to do these things ourselves. So I want to talk a little bit more. I warned that if we continue to be niggers, if we continue to be minorities, that and we fail to give ourselves permission to have discussions like this, to take the responsibility for ourselves, to take the accountability seriously that we need to have for our neighborhoods, for our young people, for our fellow human beings in our community, our brothers and sisters, other black people. If we fail to take these responsibilities to do something about that, the repercussions will continue to come. You could choose to dismiss everything that I'm saying and say, yo, I don't care what you say. I'm going to continue to do whatever I feel like doing. You could, of course, do that. The Creator gave us all free wills, so you could use your free will to say, yo, I don't care what you're saying, Mike, I'm just going to continue to do me. You can do that. But can you escape, the repercussions, that will surely come, that are coming more and more every day. We are, particularly our young people, we are the greatest killers and murderers of ourselves. And as long as we continue to fail to educate ourselves and educate our people to how and why, we were divided and conquered, how and why, how and why our lack of knowledge about ourselves, a lack of positive knowledge about ourselves, how it continues to affect us today. If we continue on that path, it's like it's gonna get worse, you know. Without that knowledge, you know, like I said in the last clip, you know, Malcolm said, without the knowledge, without education, we're demoted to the level of the lower animals. You ever been awake? You ever been awake, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you see those animal commercials where you see the poor puppy, you know, where you see the cat that's been abused, you know, and it's saying, you know, if you don't get involved and give your contribution, what's going to happen to these poor animals? We are getting into that same boat, you know, because we haven't educated ourselves, because we haven't learned how to make positive decisions based upon the education that we have. A lot of us are just as helpless as those poor animals in that commercial. And it's deep, you know. The repercussions of us not having our own positive identity that we allow to define us and to help us to come together in unity and harmony and organization so that we can do some positive work towards becoming that village that it takes to raise a child. It puts us in a position where we can't control the politicians. I grew up in the Northeast Bronx. I grew up in a housing development, the projects, called Edenwall Projects. And as an activist, I've been talking about this issue for the last 20 years. You know, it's funny, the neighborhood that I grew up in is called the upper middle class neighborhood with pockets of poverty. And the pockets of poverty, that's a principled way, you know, that's a politically correct way of saying the projects. The projects are ignored. You know, the people in the projects are, you know, they're ignored. Their issues are ignored. The decay is ignored. The fact that a lot of the people there are not politically educated is ignored. The fact that a lot of, you know, the people in the projects don't stick with each other and stick up for each other is ignored. And a lot of times it'll be ignored by your own kind. You know, in the neighborhood that I grew up in the Northeast Bronx, we've had 3 black elected officials for the last 20 years. But a lot of times the conditions in the projects have remained the same. The people who have enjoyed relationships with those politicians have been neighborhoods or, you know, parts of the neighborhood that don't even enjoy the numbers that a place like Edenwall enjoys. You know, it'll be a block association, you know, that has unity and harmony and organization on that block, you know, that will enjoy the relationship. Why? Because their numbers helps them to be strong. You know, their organized numbers, the fact that they stick together will help them to be strong. And they don't organize themselves a lot of times based on the fact that we're all the same racial or cultural group. They'll organize themselves based on the fact that, you know, this is our block. And they'll get more done on their block than a place like Edenwall, which is the 3rd largest housing development in the city. You know, they'll get more done for their block association or for their block than Edenwall will get. It has like 5,000 plus people living in it. The businesses in our community, a lot of time, you know, for the majority of the time, 99% of the businesses are run and controlled by outsiders. You know, people that don't live in the community, people who they take your money and they leave with your money. And the money, you know, you lose access to it immediately. You know, a lot of times the businesses, you can't even go to that business and get them to donate anything for the benefit of the community. And what's unfortunate about it is a lot of us don't seem to have a problem with that. You know, a lot of us don't seem to have an issue with that. And like I said, some of us might even feel like I'm being racist, for even bringing this up. When you go to other communities and that are dominated by other racial, ethnic communities, like I mentioned in the last clip, the Jewish community, they run and they own the businesses in that community. They own the cleaners. They own the barbershop. They own the supermarket. They own all of the businesses in that community. And they're not going to let anybody plant a business in that community that is not down with their racial, spiritual, ethnic, clique, for lack of a better term. But it seems because we don't have an identity that defines us, that brings us together, it allows anybody to come and set up shop in our neighborhoods, and to benefit highly, off of us, and use that to empower themselves, their places where they live, and their kind. And we got to make a start in the other direction. Because we can't control the politicians, because we have no togetherness that we can use to put pressure not only on the existing businesses, but also maybe to one day begin to open up our own business, that we can begin to put our money into, that we can begin to patronize that business and help it to grow so that one day it might become a business that can offer employment to those young people that we've been talking about, that we feel is going in the wrong direction. If we can start up that ladder where we can use our togetherness to begin to build things that can help support ourselves in our own neighborhoods, then maybe we can offer these young people a bona fide alternative. A lot of times when we're dealing with our young people, we're not being realistic. We tell them to go to school, so you can get a good job, you get an education and get a good job. And we have growing numbers of dropouts. Our young people are turning away from schools. They're turning to the streets. They're turning to, drugs. They're turning to gangs. They're turning to all types of, delinquent behaviors. And we put the blame on them. But let's look at it from another perspective. A lot of times when we telling our young people to go to school, I bet you that they're looking around the neighborhoods and they don't see that we own anything. They don't see that we control anything. They don't see any real power and strength amongst the adults in that neighborhood. And they say, well, what has school done for you? What has education done for you? And you know what? It's a valid question. It's a valid question. And don't get me wrong, because I love knowledge. You know what I mean? I love knowledge. And, I invest a whole lot of, my earning power, into acquiring books and things that can help me to become stronger. But, it's a valid question. When our young people turn around, if they ever do and ask us, you talking all that knowledge stuff, what has it done for you? We really got to answer that question for them. So anyway, there was a whole lot more that I wanted to say, and I probably will say in the immediate future. But think about it. We need to become a people. We need to adopt an identity, as black people, as African Americans, whatever, that will help us to become leaders in our own right, that will help us to become independent and strong. Get at me. Peace.